here in the perimeter, there are no stars. Out here, we is stoned. Hello and welcome. This is the C86 show. I'm David Eastaugh. As you know, we love a special guest. This week it's going to be two for the price of one. Indeed, because I just recently spoke to Dee and Steinski. Yes, those hip-hop producers from the 80s and actually right through to the current day. This is Doug, Dee, and Steven Steinski, or Stein. So you've got two here. So the interview is going to feature Doug speaking first, and then you'll get a gist of who's who between the three of us. But it's a brilliant interview, he says. Anyway, I find it interesting. So look, after several minutes of interesting but casual chat, we get down to the exciting subject of the early formative years. Over to you, Doug, who is Dee.
Well, I always liked music. I always loved music since I was a child. Originally brought up on Frank Sinatra by my parents, but I can't say there was a time when the light bulb went off, like with Steve. Steve really did have that kind of a thing. But I mean, yeah. I always enjoyed music that was new and different. So it was the late 70s. It went from dance music into new wave. And I first heard rap with the, please now.
Grandmaster Flash?
No. The Sugar Hill Gang.
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And I first heard that, and that blew my mind. I was like, what is this? I understood what was going on, but it's like, where's this coming from? So that was my first taste. And it was still only a couple of years until I met Steve that I was properly introduced to hip hop music.
Right. There you go. So it was kind of dance music. More. So were you born and were you raised in New York at this stage, by the way?
Yeah, at that stage, yes. I was born in 1955 in New York. So I was raised on all the wonderful New York radio, which at that time was AM music, but it was pop. They would play anything. You would be able to hear the Singing Nun and then the Beatles and then Deep Purple, when they came out in 1968 or whatever. So it was all over the place. And it was great. It was pop music. It was really enjoyable pop music that I got into.
Yes, amazing. And what about you, Steve? What was were you born roughly the same time, 55?
Well, I was born a little bit earlier than Doug. I was born in 51 and raised right outside, in a town right outside the Bronx called Mount Vernon. And I guess the same thing. AM radio was it, except for a couple of records around the house that my parents had by accident almost. There was one that was all whatchamacallit, South American rhythms and things. But I think that was because somebody went down there and bought a record.
Right.
But the real light bulb went on for me. I had been listening to some jazz, some new wave, a little bit of punk. And then I was listening to a radio show, an FM radio show, where Deborah Harry and Chris Stein were guest DJs. And they said, we were at a really good party last night in the Bronx, and so we borrowed all the DJs' records. And they put on Grandmaster Flash, they put on the funky 4 + 1 More, and the cut that hit me really hard because I was accidentally recording this show was the Family rap by a group called The Family over a Peter Brown track, which I found out later. And it totally blew my mind. It was as if, as I have said before, It was as if I had been waiting to hear this and didn't know it.
Yes. But you would have, you were born, you said 51. So you would have been an amazing age to sort of had experienced that kind of 60s counterculture, probably sort of aware of, the Beatles on Ed Sullivan, seeing,
Oh yeah, I
the
saw
Rolling
I saw
Stones.
saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I saw Elvis Presley on television, and yeah, all that really early black and white culture stuff, black and white television.
But did you go
And
through the sort of psychedelic period of the 60s and the Summer of Love, or, did that sort of
that
excite you
was
at all?
all kind of at a remove. I was still being a very good, obedient child at that point, and so none of that really touched me. As I got older in high school, I started smoking pot. And then when I got to college, it wasn't the summer of love because it was several years later, but I made up for lost time.
Yes. Were you ever slightly concerned at that age of going to Vietnam and sort of being drafted? Because
Oh, yes. I was eligible for the draft in the year that there was an actual draft lottery.
Mm-hmm.
And so I missed the lottery by about three points and wound up quitting the college I was at, which was a large corporate type of place in Philadelphia. And I went to a tiny little college in the mountains of New Hampshire where there were 350 students
right, tiny.
and took a lot of drugs.
You took a lot of drugs, yes. Was it just psychedelics or just hash, or what was it at this stage?
Anything I could get my hands on, quite frankly.
Don't be picky. That's what we say.
Well, well, at the time, it was all fairly good quality. I didn't take Quaaludes when they showed up because there were people just passing out while they were standing up, which didn't appeal to me. But
No.
that was one of the very few things that didn't appeal.
Yes. And did you, so during just before you got to that Debbie Harry and Chris Stein, what was your early, the 70s period? Because there was, obviously the 60s ends on a bit of a downer with Hendrix, Joplin and Morrison dying. Brian Jones had died. You had Altamont, Charles Manson. It felt like the 60s must have come to a bit of a bad end after looking so optimistic. How did you navigate that kind of world of, I don't know, rock, heavy rock, prog rock,
Well, I,
jazz
w-
fusion?
I was all for it for the most part. I went to Woodstock,
Oh, you were there.
the original one,
Fantastic. Well, yeah, you didn't want to go to 99, do you? Jesus.
and exactly, and it was, it never even occurred to me. It didn't seem like the 70s were over because there was a killing at Altamont or anything like that. It was, full speed ahead as far as I was concerned.
What was your highlight at Woodstock, by the way?
Taking animal tranquilizer and spending about 10 hours uh, just underneath a car, staying out of the rain and navigating all the hallucinations.
Yes, well, there you
I
go.
was never a large animal tranquilizer fan, so
No, that was just once was enough, wasn't it, on that front, actually? And
yeah.
did you start getting into sort of that experimental side of the 70s in New York with bands like Suicide and the New York Dolls? Did they come onto your consciousness?
Well, the Dolls, yes, certainly, hugely. I was I really dug them. Absolutely, it was wonderful. But I was also listening to, who else came through town? Um, the Art Ensemble of Chicago came through town. I was discovering Charlie Parker, bop stuff.
Were you into the Beats at that stage and Jack Kerouac and On the Road and Ginsberg?
Well, I read some of all of that, but it wasn't ever really, I didn't identify that closely with it.
Yes. And what about you, Doug? What was did you, at that stage, did you start sort of, because New York has this thing about, so Steve, you were Philadelphia, Doug, you were New York, were you?
Yeah, Brooklyn, grew up in Brooklyn and worked in the city. I started working in Manhattan in 1974 at recording studios. And at that time, I I was heavily into prog music. So I was into King Crimson, Gentle Giant, uh,
Blimey, yes, there you go.
all the great, and I got to see them all, in tiny clubs and small theaters in New York. So
Did you see Jethro Tull?
wasn't a Tull fan.
I
Oh,
did. I saw him at the Fillmore.
go. Well done, Steve. You stick in there with the Ian Anderson. I must admit, yeah, Gentle Giant's been. Derek's just got a book out, and there was
Yeah.
a collection. I think he might even be doing a talk this weekend with Tony.
He was in the city just the other day, and I was sorry to not go. It was him and Tony Visconti.
Visconti, yes. No, I
Yeah.
did an interview with dear old Derek. He was a delightful chap, delightful man.
So I was really heavily into prog, and then I started to discover James Brown and jazz, big band jazz, Count Basie,
right,
uh,
nice. What,
JB's.
John Coltrane?
Not at that point. That came later. And then a friend of mine said, "Look, there's this guy going to play the Bottom Line in New York, Bruce Springsteen. You got to get tickets." All right. I went and I got the tickets, and I went to see Bruce Springsteen when he was doing his Born to Run tour. So this was 5 nights, 10 shows at this little club in the city. And it was unbelievable. It was just an incredible show. Excuse me. So I became a big Springsteen fan and went to a lot of shows and got to meet him backstage and get his autograph. And that was a big turning point because it was the first time I ever really met a hero. I had met celebrities and stuff, but I was such a Springsteen fan that it turned me around. Instead of looking up to him or a musical celebrity, I started to turn it into myself and experience creating music on my own, such as it was at the time. It wasn't anything special, but it turned into Double Dee and Steinski by 1983.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's quite a hard path to imagine going from Bruce Springsteen to your next musical combo.
I guess so. Well, I mean, I was a big fan, but I wasn't like a rabid typical fan, so I was able to just stop it at one point.
Yes. And what about Studio 54? Did that sort of appear as well? Did you ever go to Studio 54 and get down and get funky?
I only got to go in for a few hours once with a bunch of friends and just breezed in and breezed out. It wasn't my thing. I was never really a club person at all. I enjoyed going to shows, but I didn't like the club scene unless I had a table and a chair to sit at and
Well, yes,
enjoy
I
it
know.
like a human being.
What about CBGBs and Max's Kansas City? Were they on your radar?
I missed out on that. That was like early 70s. So I didn't really
Yeah.
hit the clubs until mid to later 70s. And I just didn't I went to CBGB's once to see a friend play, but that wasn't in my path.
Right. So you didn't sort of brush past Andy Warhol and the sort of that kind of scene at all?
No.
And then as the sort of the 70s come to kind of an end and we enter the Reagan period and we have Thatcher, did that point, when did you start? You mentioned making music at that point and seeing Bruce, but you didn't get a guitar, did you? You didn't sort of pick up a guitar and write.
I learned guitar when I was 9, so I had basic and also in school they taught us the recorder, which I think like all kids learn. So
Not in my school.
Well, in my school,
the Philadelphia school.
I always, had a musical ability. When I was a teenager, I bought a reel-to-reel tape machine and microphones, and I had a guitar and a bass and a keyboard or two and friends, and we'd goof around. And that's all it ever amounted to, was goofing around. But
yes,
all of that really did help me learn basic techniques that I needed to apply as soon as I walked in the studio. So maybe I didn't have years experience, but I knew how to set up a mic and how it worked and how a console worked and EQ and all that stuff.
yes.
And you knew about musical structure too. You knew about like verses and choruses and intros and outros and things like that. And I was still learning about that.
And then when I got into the studio in 74 or 5 and I started doing music with bands and and singers and artists and demos and stuff like that. That you learn pretty quick when you're thrust into.
Did you ever sort of meet Jimmy Iovine at that stage?
No, I never met Iovine, though. When I went down to City Hall to pick up my marriage license, the woman there says, "Oh, my brother's a recording engineer too." I said, "What's his name?" I said, "Oh, Jimmy Iovine." I was like, "Okay."
Right. You were close then. That was
I never met. Yeah, that was about as close as I got to Iovine.
Yes, because he kind of started in the studio, didn't he? I think it was it with John Lennon and then I think Bruce as well and people. So I just wondered when you mentioned Bruce, whether you'd sort of brushed, against, well, not against him, but
Well, what I did was when I worked in the studio in the Clack studios in the 70s and 80s, I did a lot of advertising for records. So sometimes celebrities would or the artists would come in and we'd record them saying a script of some sort and put together a record spot. So I did do a session with Steve Van Zandt doing a commercial for Southside Johnny.
Right.
Yeah, it's very Jukes.
Nice.
That was as close as I think I got to that group of people.
And Steve, during that 70s, what was your sort of hustle? Were you sort of working at this stage or doing music or?
In 74, I had moved back to Philadelphia from being a hippie living in West Virginia. And so I was working at a trade that doesn't exist anymore. I learned it in high school, working on the high school newspaper, which is a thing called a paste-up artist. Nowadays, it's all done on computers, but back in them days, you would, if you were working at a newspaper, I worked at several, you were in charge of making sure that the columns broke in the right place, that they were correctly aligned, just things that you really wouldn't think about otherwise. And so I had this skill that I did up until I entered the School of Visual Arts in Manhattan to learn how to become an advertising copywriter.
Right.
And then my second semester there, I was picked up. It's like saying I got picked up by the Yankees. I went to work for Doyle Dane Bernbach as a junior copywriter, and pretty soon was earning enough money to be able to go into a record store without crying. And so I started buying records, and that, I didn't buy many at the beginning, maybe one or two a month, LPs, that I heard on the radio that sounded good. And then as I got better at being an advertising copywriter, I went apeshit with the money.
Yes.
That's just what I was spending money on. And I've got a lot of records. By the time I went over the hump and started selling my records, I had 15,000 here in the basement, and it took up a lot of space. There was a lot of records.
And a lot of weight, I would imagine.
Yes, a lot of weight. There were 100 boxes that I paid 3 high school wrestlers to move for me.
Yes, I know. That's when you just realize moving house with records is or books.
And I met Douglas because I had Douglas was Marco the first thing we ever worked on?
For some reason you think he was. I seem to remember something else, but at this point it's hard.
One of the Atari jobs. Or
something.
I
think we did a more standard advertising gig, and then you came up with Starbucks.
Yeah, that's right. Starbucks was it wasn't Starbucks coffee. It was a what's called a bridge and tunnel nightclub
Right.
a block from Grand Central Station, that was basically a meat market for after work people in middle management. And I got given the account, which was radio advertising, as part of a payment for a bunch of money that the agency a different agency that I was freelancing for didn't want to pay me for. So I got to work with this rather extravagant, unique client with Douglas, and that was quite the experience.
Yes. So these are kind of, just to get it right, these are sort of radio audio files, recordings that you put on.
Yes.
Right, the airwaves.
Of course, at the time they weren't audio files; it was all audio tape.
Tape, yes,
tape that Douglas was cutting with sweat and razor blades.
Well, absolutely. And what was particularly different about this one for Starbucks?
Well,
the guy was a character. He was
the guy who owned the club wanted to be the talent, and he was quite the interesting person. He was extremely New York, I guess would be the only way to call it, and he was very wealthy.
Right.
He showed up, I think, for the first or second job in a chauffeured Rolls Royce with several attractive-looking women, and that's basically how he traveled for the most part.
Casual.
It was a surprise to me, but we all got along great. Me and him and Douglas. He grew up near where Douglas grew up.
The heart of Brooklyn. Yeah. I was amazed when he did say that. But
he was Avenue X, wasn't he?
Well, I lived between X and W, yeah. So
right.
East 5th Street, right off Avenue W in Brooklyn.
And was this particular joint, the Starbucks, was it a success? Did he make it a success? Did it end well?
It was already well functioning when we came on the scene. It was a 4 or 5 story building, like I said, right by Grand Central Station. So it was very convenient to the subway, trains, everything else. And they used to, I mean, there were drawbacks to it, but yes, we did several promotions for them. The one I remember in particular was when they were in New York. They the whatchamacallit club. What was the name of the real club, Douglas? That we were aping with the Starbucks dancers. What was the name of that?
Chippendales?
Chippendales.
Yeah, the
Chippendales had opened up with these naked male or almost naked male dancers, all really great looking. So a couple of weeks later, Marco says, "Yeah, we're going to do it too. We're going to have, a guy in a Batman costume, a guy in a Superman costume. They're all going to dance." And so here's the gimmick. Women get in free, drink free, and eat free from 5 to 6. And there's going to be all these dancers, naked male dancers, and men will be charged at 6 and come in.
Right.
So we did the commercial, which ran, and at one point, Marco called me up and he said, "You should come down to the club after work tonight." And I said, "Well, Marco, that's not really my thing." It was more of a kind of a rockish club with the music and all. And he said, "No, I think you should come down." I was like, "Okay." So I only worked a couple of blocks away from Grand Central Station, so I was down there at about 5:15 or 5:20, and there was a line of women 5 wide, going around the block. There were news cameras there from every major station, and there was already a woman who had had a heart attack in line, and they had to call an ambulance.
Right.
And I went in, and, he said, well, this is really happening. I said, yes, it is. He said, why don't you and Douglas go down to North Beach Leather and pick out anything you want? So, okay. So I went back and I told Douglas this, and we both went like, yeah, okay, and didn't go. And then about a week later, he calls me up again, and he said, hey, how come you didn't go to North Beach Leather? I said, oh, Marco, you don't have to give us stuff like that. He said, no, 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 no. Go down, pick out anything you want. So, we jumped in Douglas's car and drove up there. And I guess it was towards the end of their closing. But the guy let us in. And I said, yeah, this guy, Marco. And he said, yeah, he does it with a lot of people. Just pick out anything you want. And so I had a nice jacket that I kept for a couple of years, actually.
David, if you're interested, I have a commercial here, one of the original spots, if you want to like insert it into the show.
Oh, send it.
I'll send it. Yes, absolutely.
By all means.
It's
and that way you could slug it in there after we're talking about it, and you'll know what we're talking about, because you really got to hear the guy.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'd be fascinating, actually. That's
Brooklyn. Very Brooklyn.
Right. There you go. It's So when did you? So you were making these. You were in the studio. You were quite, it's got the skill to do it. So when did you start sort of tinkering a bit more with sort of making an actual record or some sort of your own work?
Well, I was playing around really since the 70s, but it was all demo-y sounding stuff. It was never very polished. I didn't really understand what it took to make a record, which is usually a good song.
Yes.
But it wasn't until the like the 82, 83 period where I started acquiring a lot of toys, like the famous Roland bass line, the 303, the 606, 808 drum machines. You name it. I was
Plus you had stuff that you rented. There was a Lindrum one time.
Yeah, I mean, I was playing around with all that stuff. So now I had the tools, but it was still demo-y kind of stuff. I mean, I'm never really satisfied with my musical production in terms of the standard music. I really like the type of stuff I do with Steve, and that's what I enjoy and feel I am best at.
Yes. So when did the collaboration start to sort of merge then?
Well, when Steve came to the studio, it was like spring of 83, and then we did whatever. We did some Atari commercials, some other advertising stuff. I think Marco came later than that, 84 or 5.
Yeah, it's quite possible. But we went to the Roxy together for the first time.
Yeah, we started to like hang out because we realized we had similar musical tastes. So Steve got me to go to the Roxy Club in New York, which was like one of the premier hip hop locations. And Friday nights were the Zulu nights. So it was Africa Bambaataa and that whole crew. So they'd be spinning, and there might be some teams of break dancers. There was a huge wall where there were graffiti artists coming in, and it was that was amazing. That was one of the best times of my life seeing.
It was really great. The Roxy was an old bus terminal which was almost a block long, and it had been turned into a roller skating rink. And how that worked, I couldn't ever figure out, because they served liquor and it was dark. So, I mean, let's go to the Roxy and roller skate and get loaded and hit people in the dark. I mean, it never my thing. But Friday nights, Ruza Blue who was a promoter, a hip hop promoter. Pardon me. She took over Friday nights at the Roxy. And at the beginning, I mean, even the bar was a picnic table on the floor, on the floor, down the dance floor, where you just went up and they had, a bag of ice back there and a couple of bottles of liquor and some beer. And that was it. And the DJ booth was a table on the dance floor, and you could stand around and watch DST or or Red Alert just killing it there. And the sound system was also really great because they had all these bass cabinets on the floor, so it really pulsed.
Yes.
So it was great, and you really, I mean, loud rap music, man, that's fine by me. It was great.
Because I do remember, because I suppose it was John Peel started to introduce us to the sort of early hip hop. And there was one, because you mentioned DST, didn't you? And they did a single called The Home of Hip Hop, which came out on Celluloid Records, didn't it?
Yeah.
So that they were all happening at that time when you were doing the club.
Yep.
My God. And was African Bambaataa, was he a major player on that particular scene at the time?
He was around, I mean, he was more of a selector than he was a playing out DJ. He used to work with a couple of different DJs where he would, hand them the records. Jazzy J was one in particular that I remember. That was, I remember that was another one of those things. I think that was in the movie where I remember I was at the Roxy, and Jazzy J is playing something, and Bambaataa looks around, and he just hands 2 7-inches to Jazzy J. Jazzy J looks at it, okay, puts one on, and scratches into the beginning of the what was it, the Shirley, oh God,
Name game?
help me hear you. I think it was the Name Game, and it was the opening, and it was just killing.
Right.
All they did was loop the opening and scratch over it, and it wasn't even that long of an opening. And as soon as I heard it, it was like, oh shit, that's Shirley Ellis in the Name Game. And the last time I heard that, I was 9, and it was like, fuck, and I liked it then too, that was wonderful.
Was that a kind of light bulb moment, sort of?
It was another light bulb moment, yeah, because the next day I went down to the record shopping area in Greenwich Village and started looking for singles of the Name Game, and I got 2 of them, and surprisingly, these were 2 used copies from some uptown DJ because they were totally burnt at the opening, where you would queue up and rock it back and forth. They were, I mean, I probably still have them if they didn't warp. And it was, yeah, that was a moment.
Yes, absolutely. Because a few years later, I remember getting into people like The Real Roxanne and Roxanne Shante and Sweet Tea, but they were kind of rappers. So were they a little bit on that scene, or were they a bit later on in that hip hop world in
Bit
New
later
York?
on, bit later on.
Right, because then there was a guy called Morgan Khan in possibly the UK, who had a label called Street Sounds, and they were compilation collections on vinyl, and that's where we started to sort of acquire all these records or singles from American artists, which we thought were so cool and groovy, and we thought, yes, that's us. And it was kind of again John Peel who would be playing this stuff and being very curious. I remember him playing Public Enemy's Yo Bum Rush the Show and being quite.
Jesus, yeah.
And then LL Cool J, Rock the Bells and Radio. And that was another one of those ones on Def Jam Records, which were quite stunning. So I think that was where things started. But before that, you had Fab Five Freddy, didn't you? So did you get to see him performing live?
I worked with him a few times doing some MTV commercials.
Right. So was he more of a visual? Was he more of a visual artist? Sorry.
Sorry.
More of a visual artist?
Yes.
Well, I think he started that way, but then when I met him, he'd got into TV co-producing the MTV Raps show, Yo. So I he was kind of all over the place. He did some music, he did some great record work, and
yeah, very entrepreneurial. Actually.
Right. He was on the scene.
Nice guy.
And who else were the main players at that time who were sort of pushing the scene?
Well, Rick Rubin started producing the Beastie Boys at that time.
Rick Rubin started working for Def Jam, which was nuts. Everything he touched was just wonderful. There was Roby and Arthur
John
Baker.
Roby, right?
I mean, shit with the Planet Rock, so that pushed the Zulu Nation way to the fore. The Fab Five Freddy stuff, a lot of that was produced by what's his name, the bass player,
Martin Beastie.
Oh, Martin Beastie. Yes, I'd done an interview with dear old Martin.
Martin Beastie was one of them. Yeah.
Because he had BC Studios, and he had quite a lot of people like the Swans and Sonic Youth and American sort of, I suppose, rock punk at the time.
Noisy stuff, yeah.
But there was another. I know who you're thinking of, Steve, but I can't think of his name.
Right.
There was another
Bill
guy.
Something.
Bill Laswell.
Bill Laswell.
Yes. Bill Laswell produced all the early Fab Five Freddy stuff and the early stuff by B-side.
Right.
So he was kind of laboring along in the background. He was never one to really be very spotlight, as far as I could tell. And yeah, he had done stuff. Trying to remember who else. Davey D was producing stuff. What's his name with the magic mixing glove who worked with Mr. Magic?
Mr. Magic.
I can't think of his name.
No.
Yeah. And then, I mean, there were people, and we bumped into a lot of people at the Roxy, because once the first record was out, we were kind of, celebs ourselves for a moment.
Plus, we'd meet people just, all of a sudden, Monica Lynch from Tommy Boy started taking us around.
Yeah.
And then we went up to Unique Studios and met a lot of people. That's where we met James Brown.
Right.
Up there.
That must have been an amazing moment.
They said, okay, she'll shake his hand and you call him Mr. Brown. Like, okay. And that's just what we did. I don't know if he knew who we were or cared, but
it's better than Bill Cosby. You had to call him Dr. Cosby.
No.
And couldn't look at him.
I know one of the women that
Oy.
Yeah.
Oy. Yes. Tricky.
Very nasty stuff.
Unpleasant. Yes. I mean, at that time we were getting very excited because we were starting to we had Channel 4. We had a fourth TV station in the UK, and we had Channel 4, and we had the Richard Pryor live on Sunset Boulevard, and we went, oh my God, Richard Pryor, this is just amazing. We're never seen, you'd heard of, vaguely people like Lenny Bruce and Lord Butley, but then Richard Pryor came along, it was like, oh my God, this is just, I suppose you've got to remember, when you're a kid in the UK, into indie pop and rock and stuff like that, but at the same time have an amazing curiosity, sort of coming across all these kind of sounds and sort of scenes just seemed very, very exciting. And, you just wanted to enjoy it all and embrace it and be curious about it. So I think that's where I was coming from in that world. And just always being excited by that, what was John Peel going to play next? What had he discovered? So that was it, really. So then...
go ahead, Doug.
After you, Doug?
Not me.
Not you.
So I was going to say, I forget. Never mind.
That's fine. This is what happens.
I guess the one thing that I didn't that occurred to me was it was amazing to me that we got traction in the UK I mean, in New York, sure, because New York was, hip hop and people we knew and all the rest of that. And the first time someone showed up with a clip from a British music paper that said something about the lessons, it was like, holy shit, how'd that happen? You know?
Yes, well, it's interesting, isn't it, really? I think there is this sort of point in life where you're just always wanting to discover something that no one else had. I don't know what, kids, I'm sure they are now, but, that kind of excitement. And, you
Yeah.
started thinking, yes, I must get into the Cramps or Sonic Youth or the Butthole Surfers.
Well, that's one of the cool things about the stuff that we did is all the different types of things we put into the mixes from different sources,
Yeah.
Between cartoons and movies and pop records and jazz records. And you always kind of hope that somebody somewhere is going to hear something and then go off on a tangent, go down that rabbit hole and start enjoying that music or that
Learn
artist.
something.
Yes. So was the lesson, the first lesson one, was that the first one you recorded, or was it master mixes? What was the first time you released something?
Released something.
Well, I had been working as a DJ in Brooklyn for a while at that point, DJing for a hippie food co-op and their dances. So I had done stuff and mixed a little bit at home with two turntables and a mixer onto a cassette. But the contest thing with Douglas, the Payoff mix, that was that just got dropped on top of us, and we, responded to the call.
Right.
Well, it was for me. It was a couple of years before that. I was doing some radio spots with a guy from RCA Records, and I said it was for Solar Records, so it was Fantastic Voyage and
Those LA bands.
It's a Love Thing, and I can't remember
Yeah.
the make that move right now. So all these songs really fit together, and I said, let me make a mix of this, but I just it was like one song, then the other song, then the other song, with maybe a couple of edits. And after listening to that, I said, we can go further than this. And what was going on at the time, there was a guy in New York called Shep Pettibone,
Oh, yes.
and he was on the air. And every day at like noon or something, he'd play it was Master Mix Hour. So he'd play whatever. I guess he was doing all this stuff and maybe throwing in some
Club
records
mixes,
too.
yeah.
So my friend Greg and I, we did a remix of these three songs and sent it in. And he put it right on the air and called up and said, how'd you guys do this? And I said, well, just, a 4-track tape machine. And he went, oh, okay. And that was getting requests for a while, which was kind of nice. And that was my first taste of any kind of musical release or brush with the public. And so then the progression to lesson one was very natural for me because plus all the work I was doing on a daily basis kept me in top form.
So the lesson, the Payoff mix, this is the first one, isn't it? This is So this came out on Tommy Boy Records.
Not at first.
Not at first.
Steve, we did that first record. Tommy Boy sent it out as tapes to radio stations.
Yes.
Then a year later, we decided to do. No, it wasn't a year later. It was only a few months later. We decided to do what was the James Brown mix, lesson 2. And at that point, we said, why don't we press this up on our own records and
Yes.
and hand it out? So we pressed up, I guess, I don't know, a couple of 100 or 500 or whatever it was on our own label and started handing that out. And it was years later that all of a sudden we realized people were buying it and buying it for good amounts of money. And then by the time we did lesson 3, that's when Tommy Boy decided to put them all together.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was working. I was selling records at a record fair in Manhattan, and we were all redding up, getting ready to open the doors. And before the doors opened, this kid appears in front of me, riffles through the records really quickly, and says, "I'll give you $25 each for every one of these." And it was our record that we had pressed up. I said, "What?" He said, "Yeah, I'll give you $25 for each of them." I said, "How do you even know this exists?" And he said, "There's a picture of it on the wall of a record store in Osaka, and I've been looking for it ever since." He said, "I'm going to take this back to Japan and sell them there." I was like, solid, man. Give me the money. So,
Right. So how many did get mixed, when it was on Tommy Boy then of lesson one?
How did it get mixed?
No, how many did you get printed or
well,
the
Tommy
very first record, probably about 200 or so.
right. And how did you get on with, the clearance? I mean, was it yeah.
We never did, really.
No.
They tried.
We didn't.
So did that mean that you did it and went, "Oh, that was fun," and then went, "Oh, actually, there was a few more issues to do with this. Oh, well, never mind. We'll just have to just forget it."
It wasn't that it wasn't explored. The lawyer at Tommy Boy, they had a staff lawyer. And so he was like, "Oh, okay, fine. So why don't you give me a list of everything that's on and we'll see." So we gave him a list. And I think, 2 days later, he called back and he said, "This is impossible." He said, "Never going to work." And it wasn't so much even that people wanted so much money. It was that no one understood what the record was. They were like, "What do you mean? They used 7 seconds of our record and that's it?" Yeah. So he was talking to 50 different people who were all like, "I don't understand. You just used a little bit of the record and that's all." Yeah. So and no one knew how to price things at that point. This was one of the first record. This was, probably the first record like this. I mean, there had been the Flying Saucer records before us, but they were record business pros, and they had gone to people they knew and got what was called a medley rate for their record.
Right.
And that didn't wash by the time we showed up. No medley rate. We don't know what you're talking about. Go away.
Because there was something in the UK, I don't know if it was worldwide, because I remember on the school bus, something called Stars on 45, and they just had this medley thing. And I think there was a Beatles one and various others. So was it the case this was a bit more, I don't know, engineered by various people and lawyers to say, yes, you can have all these songs if you just play a few seconds? Because it was just one of these odd kind of records that I haven't played for about 45 years or heard. But it was...
I remember buying that record because it's like, wow, this is amazing. And then that would have been the late 70s, I think, right? I don't know if that was in the 80s or
Beats
not.
me.
Yeah, I mean,
but I remember taking it home and listening to it and go, yeah, this is cool. And then after a while, I'm going, yeah, but now it sounds like they're just shoving in songs just to have another song in there, and it quickly wore its welcome. And
I think, didn't they also they had a beat that everything sunk to?
Yeah, it was just like I said, boom. It was a steady 4/4 disco beat or whatever, and just throw the record on top of it. But
and it was quite...
you can do that, but it doesn't mean it's going to be good. But
no,
apparently people loved it, so
it got into the charts. But it was that thing. I think from 45 years or plus, it was something like Stars on 45, da, 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 da. And then they would then put it was just like a commercial. It was like this, a bit of this, and a bit of that Beatles song, and it just went through. And you thought, I don't need to hear the whole record. It's a bit tedious, and I get the point. But then this was different because this had a groove, and it felt a bit more like a club kind of, I don't know, a totally different energy to it,
It was made
basically.
for it was made for a club, and as long as it's got that steady beat and people can keep dancing, that's, that's why it worked.
And so you did lessons one, I guess this is chronological. Then you did the James Brown one. Things are going well at this stage, aren't they?
Yeah.
This is good. And this is 85. We're really rocking on this. And then you do the history of hip hop mix, which is stunning. So at this stage, are you just kind of doing this as a sort of side hustle and loads of other hustles as well in New York at this point?
Well,
No.
I was still at that point. I had actually quit my studio job for maybe 6 months, and then went back to work in the studio. So I was doing that. I needed to make money, and this was making records was not making me money. I remember having to roll up my change one day and say, "Okay, I got to go get a job now." I mean, literally. So
Yeah.
now my brain is starting to go off in another direction. So, Steve, if you want
And I
to,
was at that same time I was freelancing. I had already quit. I had already quit my job, and was freelancing at different advertising agencies. And the music was a side hustle. So that's when I did the Kennedy record.
Right.
Was around that time.
Yes, because there was another 12-inch I bought, it was like this one with just advertising bits on it, and it had something like batteries not included,
we'll
and
be
so
right back.
we'll be
Oh,
right.
that, yes, we'll be right back. Yeah, the advertising thing. Yeah, that wasn't bad either. That was when I got signed to Island for one single.
Yes, with that, God, who did that one? God,
That was me, David Ogren, and one or two friends of ours. And that happened because, let me think. I got signed for a single
right,
to Island Records by Joel Weber, who had just become their A&R guy. And Joel I had known through Tommy Boy, and he was, a player. He knew music. He had worked on various projects, and he was now working at Island as an A&R guy. He got in touch with me and he said, you ever want to do a record that might be clearable? And I,
right.
and I said, well, I got one or two ideas.
That's a
So
novelty.
did the advertising record, which, didn't really knock everybody over.
No.
And the Kennedy record was, I guess, just before that.
Yeah, so
And,
you cost me a fortune at this point trying to find. So I didn't realize that was you, but I bought that one. We'll be right back because it was just a little bit of again. John Peel played it, didn't he? Because that's where I would have heard it.
and then I think after that, I got hired to do a TV commercial in Britain for Pretty Polly Bras. And what they had me do was bring in people, record it, put it to music, uh, and then they then shot the pictures around the track I sent.
Right, so this is you and the mass meet. Right, this is
Yeah.
because the annoying thing was there was one which had a bit of a Robert De Niro, like dialogue in it, and my ex-boss bought a copy, and I sort of, probably had it taped somewhere and lost the tape. I'll never, I've tried sort of putting something in the Google search, but never came across it. But it was one of those ones again, really obscure ones that John Peel played, and it had Robert De Niro,
Huh.
vocal on it, and I thought, oh my God, this is just brilliant. And yes, I'll never hear that record again. So that was 40 years ago. It was, when you put TDK D90 cassettes and you got these little classics, and then you move house and you lose them, and you think, what was that record? That was it.
Yeah.
So 87, which I still think is one of the great years of music. So when did you then do the Motorcade Sped On? Whose idea was that?
That was my idea. I wanted to do something very emotional, and at the time, the Kennedy assassination was still a thing. Now it's like, who was Kennedy? Back then, okay, Kennedy got shot. There were enough people running around who were in, I guess, my target audience that would remember this. And so I put this together with an engineer called Craig Bevan, who I'm still in touch with. And he thought he was working at the inexpensive downtown hip hop studio, INS Studios, which stood for Ian North Studios. And he was working pretty much around the clock. And I came in with this project, and he looked at me, and it was like, he didn't even have to say it. It was like, you're out of your mind, and I hope you paid. Was pretty much it. And I worked with him on that on and off for about 4 months while I was kind of working out what was going on. And this was because this was not Douglas, so I had to basically, roll around and do it mostly myself. And, it worked out. It was okay. I think Tommy Boy sent it out, distributed it because they owed me money and they wanted to pay me that way rather than actually parting with cash. And so it got a little bit, it didn't get much play on the radio, but there were people who liked it. And I forget how it got to England. But yeah, then it was, the copy of the paper and with Sonic Youth, and all of a sudden it was like a thing.
Yeah, so that was, I think, the 6th of May. I don't know what year that was, but yes, well, that would be 1987. I think that all sort of appeared, didn't it, on our...
It sounds about right. That would be about right, or maybe 86.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were on a
86.
hiatus as Double Dee and Steinski because I had just got a staff job in a studio, and I didn't have any energy left.
Yeah, you
to
had
do
to
our
work.
own
You had to
stuff.
really work.
Right.
Yes. But you must, I mean, it is just such a brilliantly, I mean, I think all those releases are just brilliant.
I just did a remix of those for, we have our lifetime chronological set being mastered right now. I'm mastering it. So I did a remix of the Kennedy record, and also We'll Be Right Back.
Oh, you awesome character.
And what else? There was and then also my favorite is the Bush records, the war record. What was that
yeah,
called?
the one I did with Alan. Yeah.
Right, my God. So you've been dealing with your very extensive archives. So you have no idea how the NME then sort of found it and put it on that sort of free single that came out with the paper, which probably had a circulation of about 100,000 copies.
Well, I heard from somebody who lived in England at the time, where he was DJing in London, and he said somebody showed up and they paid £40 for this cassette, and it was an air check of the Kennedy record, and it was around. And that's the only thing I can say. It was around.
Right. And did you get much? And what was the feedback like with that particular release? Did you get to hear? None.
Some people thought it was an interesting way to treat the material. Other people wanted to kill me because they had been alive when Kennedy was assassinated, and this was, what are you doing, you nasty punk? And a lot of people, I don't know, it wasn't that tuneful and danceable. It was more of an art thing.
Yes.
And so a lot of people just didn't pay any attention to it at all, or weren't touched by it in particular.
Yes.
Okay, I mean, what the hell, man? I got interviewed in the NME, so that was as far as I was concerned, it was a win.
Well, absolutely. And then you had your massive royalty check, and you went, oh, Marvelous.
My God. Yeah, right. Yeah, never mind about how much money I'm swimming in right
I
now.
know. It's just like, what do you do with all this? I'll go to Switzerland. You didn't, did you? It probably was like, oh, okay. And then how do you then navigate the next bit? Because in the UK, I was an indie kid, so it was all about the Smiths and jingly jangly guitars. And 87, there was a lot of change in that point where a lot of bands who'd been together for quite a few years were calling it a day. They thought this has been really good fun. Well, they probably all fell out of it with each other. And, by the third album, they're often a bit fed up. They've got, the tensions with the band. There's no money. They're just thinking, oh, we've just had it now. We're over it. We're 25. We're ancient. We're old news. But then Ecstasy comes along, and then that Chicago house music, and more hip hop coming over, and we had De La Soul, didn't we? We had the Digital Underground, Stetsasonic. I remember going to see them live. It was very exciting. And there was, dance music, grunge music. How do you then navigate that next period? Do you sort of go your separate ways at this point and just go, that was the 80s?
No, Steve and I were always hanging out.
Yeah. I mean,
it just got to a point where instead of hanging out and doing music, we were hanging out and getting high and going out and for dinner and buying records at Tower Records.
Yeah.
Nice.
I mean, so it wasn't as if we, didn't have contact with each other. It was just, all right.
But it was it was 98 when we came up with, I don't know who initiated it. I kind of think maybe it was you, but we did jazz.
Ah, yeah.
And it was right around the time you also did Nothing to Fear, because you gave me Nothing to Fear, and I tried to mix it, and my Pro Tools system couldn't handle it. And I said, I'm sorry, I just can't write.
I remember that filled up so much of a hard drive. It was 20 minutes to open in Pro Tools.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that was.
But jazz is a really fun piece, and that was so we called it. We had titled that "We're Back" because that was our first.
Yeah.
Turn.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. What was also a lot of fun, and I might add, is that our roles in the studio were reversed. Douglas, at that point, was between jobs and between systems. And I was using not Pro Tools. I guess I was using Ableton by that point.
No, Ableton didn't exist then. It was Pro Tools.
It was Pro Tools?
Yep.
Aha. Yep. Okay.
Pro Tools 4, because that's the first one I started on.
Right. You were sitting behind me, and I was actually doing the
you were making the edits because I didn't know how to. I didn't know the keystrokes. I didn't know what to do yet. It took me a while.
Right. You didn't know Pro Tools at that point.
Right. That was the problem. Right. I knew what I wanted to do.
What was that thing that you had been using? What was that?
Well, I was using the Synclavier in the 90s. And then I transitioned for a short time. Avid made this other system called Audio Vision. So we got that for literally 6 months and threw that out, and they upgraded us to Pro Tools.
What was that machine you were working at that had the big trackball in it?
That was the Synclavier. That was at National.
Was the Synclavier?
Yeah.
Huh. Son of a bitch. Okay.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Good times.
Yeah, so anyway, at that point, I was making the edits. Douglas is sitting in back of me, making the same noises that I made when I was sitting in back of him, like, no. That kind of thing. But in the end, it worked out. And I like that record as much as anything we've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
I really like that.
So that's jazz.
Yes.
Or the follow-up to jazz.
No, that was jazz. And then right after that, we did a remix for Tony Touch, and then we did a Sugar Hill.
Yeah.
The Sugar Hill mix.
The Sugar Hill record, right. The voicemail thing.
Right.
And then there was another one, I think, but I can't think right now.
Huh.
We did the DJ Dimitri record.
Oh, that's right. That's right.
Which is the only one I don't have a digital copy of. I only have that on vinyl.
Huh.
Was that called Voicemail?
Voicemail was the Sugar Hill mix.
Was the Sugar Hill mix.
Right, and Nothing to Fear.
Nothing to Fear was a project that took me, that was like a year and a half. It was a full-length mix that I ostensibly did for Solid Steel, but really I was laboring along, having a very good time, and doing as much as I could with existing recordings. You know, can still listen to parts of it and not cringe.
Right, which is always a good sign, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that's the best sign at this point, because I cringe at a lot of stuff.
Well, yes, absolutely. It's quite, and then as sort of we get into the sort of 2010 period. This is where you're still sort of quite active, aren't you, at this point?
At that point, we were lucky enough to do a few shows. We did the first show where I ever appeared on stage in 2002, I think, at Roseland.
Where we opened for DJ Shadow.
Opened for DJ Shadow.
Yes.
And
So
that
were
was
people
amazing.
starting to sort of become curious, going, because we always, you start to get discovered by a younger generation, or people who, yes, those DJs like you.
Yeah, I mean, we had been out of it for so long that I remember somebody showing up at my studio with introducing the Shadow record. And they said, hey, your name checked on this record. And I said, what? And I looked at it, I said, who is this guy? I mean, how does anybody remember who we are? And it turned out that he had done a lesson, and Cut Chemist had done a lesson, and they looked us up. It was
they came
amazing
to
to me, because for a long time we were nobody.
Just a nobody, just wandering the streets.
Spending our money from the royalties. Yeah,
the royalties, you were still
don't forget the royalties.
burning through. Absolutely.
So yeah, we did that Roseland show, and then it was a few years later we did a show opening for Cold Cut.
Right, of course.
Oh, that's
Cold
right.
Cut show.
Holy shit! Yeah, at
Irving Plaza. And then I think the year after that, then we did another couple of shows opening for Shadow and Cut Chemist. That was when they did their 7-inch.
When they were doing, I forget what it was called, but yeah. Jesus, it was wild watching.
And that was so much fun to get up on. I was so damn nervous to get up on stage for my whole life, ever since I did. I had a guitar recital at 9 years old, so I just couldn't get up in front of an audience. But when Shadow called us up to do the gig, I knew that I had to do it. I had to force myself.
So glad.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
It was just the best experience to be on a stage when people are shouting and screaming. And it's like, wow, that's intoxicating.
I would also mention that I believe at that first show with Shadow, when we came in the second night and we were getting ready to set up, the sound guy at Irving Plaza said, I really liked your set last night. That was really good. It was like, oh, thanks a lot, man. And then when we were leaving, somebody said, hey, you were louder than Shadow, which was really funny.
Yes, absolutely. God, you blew him off stage. That's good. That's good. So then you do various compilations, don't you? What Does It All Mean? Which kind of features number 3 on Flight 11, which is...
Yeah, well, yeah. The number 2 on Flight 11, that was just, I didn't really plan on doing anything. And then I heard that woman, the transcription of that woman's telephone call. And it was like another light bulb went on. And I said, that's it. That's the one I want to use. And the thing is, I used to live 2 blocks from the Trade Center for a long time. I lived in a loft a little bit east of that. And I used to skateboard around there.
Yes.
And I used to have lunch in there. And I knew people that worked in there. And it hit me like, oh, God, this is horrible. I wasn't even living near there at the time, but it was bad. And I didn't even think about doing anything till I heard that thing from Betty Ong. And then I thought, yeah, okay, that I can do something with. And, I mean, I did this little atmospheric piece and glad I did it. It was the right thing. And I had a voiceover person that I was working with read pieces of a poem that a friend of mine had done, and that produced the rest of the material.
Yes, God, it's quite amazing, isn't it? Yes, I remember that period well. Oh, that's terrible. Yes. And then sort of fast forwarded again, did you work as a solo artist at this point as well?
Yeah, I was touring after a while. I mean, I guess after we got re-remembered, um, I thought, well, if I don't go out now, I'm never going to go out. So I started touring as a solo artist, and I spent a lot of time it was the UK at the time, so I spent a lot of time in the UK and England and Ireland. Um, and I spent a lot of time in various parts of Germany. I played in Russia. I was in Australia for almost a month. Uh, it was, well, I mean, it was a nice time. I always came home sick from various respiratory illnesses, and I always came home really tired because I was never, a marquee artist. I was an interesting person to have,
Hmm.
but I was an interesting person to have on a Tuesday. And and so, you're not paying for the big hotel, you're not paying for a flight that's at the right time. What would happen is I'd go back to the hotel, sleep for 3 hours, and then have to go to the airport to fly someplace else where I was doing another cheap gig.
Yes.
Luckily it was all over Europe, so it wasn't that much of a problem, but still, it kind of got to me. So after a while, I guess I stopped after a while because I just had to. Plus, I had family issues that I had to deal with. My mom was sick, and, that was taking up a lot of my time.
Well, yes. It's always a tricky one, isn't it, when you're dealing with parents that start to
Yeah.
become a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
bit fragile, which is quite tricky. Yes. And then, so in 2000, was it 15, you would have a 12-minute mix called the Insanity Clause.
Ha
So,
ha. Tell him, Douglas.
Well, that excuse me, that came about because I was bored. I was doing. I started working at home just like in 2013, and I just wasn't as busy as I used to be, and I was bored and wanted something to do, and I talked to Steve and I said, you want to do something? He says, no, it's really, I'm kind of busy with my mom, but I got all this stuff that I accumulated. So why don't I send it to you? So he sent me maybe 5 hours of material, just all kinds of songs and bites and clips and things. And I started playing with it. And what I did was, it was May 1st, because I called it the May Day mix originally. And what I had done was I had all this music that I didn't even recognize. I said, how am I going to get through this? Because not only do I have to hear it, but I have to remember it and I have to refer to it. So I took all the songs, and I put them on like 4 or 5 different tracks in Ableton. And I had it set up so that every 4 bars, it would play another set of random pieces of music. And I started that going, and I went upstairs and had some lunch and came back like a half hour later and had this long mix. And some parts were good and some parts were terrible. But what I did is I went through it and trimmed out things here and there and got it down to maybe 15 minutes. And Steve liked it, and Steve's wife liked it, and I liked it, and just started to play around with it some more. And it started to evolve. It started to pick up its own personality when I started to when I used the opening bites about, in references to crazy. So it became the Insanity mix. And
right.
once I was in that track, then I started searching for more material that fits. And that's how that worked out. It
Did
started as like a random experiment.
And from there, did it follow on that you did Realm of the Jezebel Spirit?
Jezebel Spirit was another piece that I came up with, and I was we had already, well, that was after. I'm trying to place the timeline here because Adam, our friend ADA, who's done some great DJ work with us, did some work on Jezebel 2, I think.
Right.
I'm starting to confuse myself.
It's yes.
You and me both, man. I never kept track of this stuff.
I've done good so far, though.
You're killing it. You're killing
Jezebel, that came about because I heard the opening in my head. It was it was the Who doing Magic Bus in the
Right.
beginning from Live at Leeds, and it's just it's just like this. They're playing wood blocks, I think, and I looped that and started working with that, and I can't recall my thought processes, but it was fun to get back into the preacher stuff. Finding these guys that are just shouting ridiculous ideas.
Yes, well, the good sound bites. Good sound bites.
They make really good sound bites, and then I really explored that even more with when we got back to lesson 4.
Right.
That was a real tour de force of preachers, I think.
So when did you do lesson 4? When was that one?
That came just another few years later. That was 2018, 2019, I think.
But it started
in 1986, right? We had started to make that as our lesson 4 back then, and we were playing in the studio, but just never finished it because.
Well, because
for one thing, it needed
stuff.
a bass line, and I didn't know that it needed a bass line. It needed something, and it just wasn't coming together. But I think what we did in 1986 is a really cool thing, and I remixed that too. So now it really stands alone, and that's considered lesson 4, take 1 now.
Cool. That is very good. And then the last 5 years, what have you got the website up and you've got your bits and pieces? What have you sort of been working on for the last year, this decade?
Oh, Jesus, trying to regain my sanity and get rid of my physical aches and pains.
This is what yes, I know. This is the joys of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah, it's kind of gotten to that.
I have a bunch of stuff up on SoundCloud. That's mainly little exercisey things that I've done using various clips. But, I mean, it's not for major distribution.
You did that piece that I really like, and I still want to talk to you about it, The Action. Do you recall? You gave
The Action.
Me?
Yeah.
We used it on the lesson 4.
What the hipsters call The Action.
And it's such a cool. I never got you saying anything about that. How you came about with that? Was it just an experiment, or?
That's from a comedy record.
Oh, really?
Oh, you mean the piece in general, The Action?
Yeah, in general.
Yeah, the piece in general was just I had one night I was screwing around with a lot of spoken word bites, and I got this reasonably good rhythm going, and I forget how I supported it musically, but yeah, that was one of those things that are like prosody exercises, just the rhythm of people speaking and how it works. That's really what I've been interested in the last couple of years. And like I said, did this SoundCloud stuff, and
I'm forgetting something important. There's a new lesson in the can. It's all finished.
Oh, excellent.
Which one is it?
Well, it's the history. It's the whatchamacallit, the Depression stuff.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
there are these interviews done by, what's his name again now?
Studs Terkel.
Studs Terkel interviewed people about their experiences during the 30s and the Depression. And I found these interviews, and actually Steve gave them to me. There's like 9 hours of these edited interviews, and they're really fantastic. So it's basically people talking about how, how they had no food.
It was, yeah, it's from the book. He did a book about the Depression, and he interviewed 1 million people, and he taped the interviews. And
Right.
at one point, I forget how I got them, but they showed up on the internet, and I got them. So I just handed them off to Douglas.
So there's a piece that's built on that, and oh God, what was I going to say? Oh, well, I've been putting together a box set, which has been going on for years now. It was supposed
Yeah.
to be out maybe 2 or 3 years ago as a vinyl set. We were going to put out six 12 inches, and this was going to be with the label Flamboyant
Right.
that I hooked up with, and it just keeps falling apart for various reasons. So at this point, what was going to be a 6 record vinyl set is now going to be a several 2 or 3 CD set, that where everything is remixed, remastered, everything, our whole catalog. And I've created a book. It's like 128 page. It's like a scrapbook of Double Dee and Steinski. It's got some really incredible, insightful articles by various people as well as ourselves.
Yes.
And
well, Robert
Double Dee and
Christgau,
Steinski,
certainly.
and
Yeah.
Chris Gow. It's got the Double Dee and Steinski comics that were in the Hip Hop Hall of Fame.
Oh,
books,
that's right.
and lots of great pictures. So this book is pretty much ready to go. I need to print up some tests.
Right.
And that's really what's been taking up my my time in between moaning about aches and pains, as I said.
Well, absolutely. So hopefully 2026, then you'll have this box set with nice
Yes.
packaging, and that's all
Yes.
going to be. Oh my God.
I can't guarantee how it's going to be distributed at this point because it's all basically a DIY project. But I have a couple of people to talk to that hopefully can help out.
Yes.
And if
That's
I can get a
good.
few hundred made, that would be great.
Absolutely. Well, that'll be just before that though. You did the Craps game.
Yes.
Was this
Aha.
was that a joint project as well?
Did you work on that, Steve? I don't know if you
I
did.
think I gave you the original skeleton, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, of course. Duh. How can I not realize? Steve did a piece called Craps Game Descending
A
a
craps game
Staircase.
descending a staircase.
So what Steve did is he cut it all together, and I said, "Oh, this is great. Let me remix it. It could sound better than this." So he gave me the Ableton session, and for some reason I could not get any of the drum stuff to come up I use a plugin called Stylus for all the drum loops.
No
Nothing
harm.
was working. So I said, "All right, the hell with this. Let me put some other music underneath and I can, EQ the bytes and just get rolling." And what I did is I kept all of Steve's bytes in there, everything that he did exactly the same, essentially, except slipping in a new music bed. So I built a whole new music bed under and threw some other bytes in.
Yeah.
And then was able to put that out on the record with Steve's version as well, which is just as good. I mean, they're both great versions. They're just a little different.
Yeah, blimey. That's amazing. And are these all available on Bandcamp, by the way?
Yes.
So one can go to Bandcamp and do it, and that's all good.
Yes,
and any other ways of being able to access your work, or is it mostly via your very comprehensive website?
It's mostly accessible through Bandcamp. The website, I sell a couple of things, and I have to redo the store because I just need to modernize it a little bit. I've got some old versions of our stuff. I got some of the records. Actually found a little handful of some of the original records that we made up in 1984.
Right.
Double Dee and Steinski, lesson 1 and 2. And some other things like test pressings and some odds and ends.
That's fantastic.
And that's all on the website.
Did you enjoy doing the website?
Yes and no. I I enjoy doing it when it's done. I don't enjoy doing it while I'm in the middle because usually, especially in this case, it's learning something new, learning Squarespace and how to lay stuff out and all that. And then I'm really particular and I'm a perfectionist, so I tend to hate what I've done, but it serves its purpose.
It's there. No,
Yeah.
I was so pleased because there's a few artists that I keep thinking, oh, it would be amazing to get hold, to do an interview and I hopefully, I contacted and I thought, wow, that will be the Zoom. And it was like, oh, wow, you've replied. And I was like, oh my God, this record was such a moment.
Well, thank you.
And I was, just overwhelmed that you said yes. And I thought, I am so lucky. I can't believe it. I just love this kind of thing about any decades, but the 80s, it just had some moments, didn't it? And it was just stunning to have stumbled on that moment. And I'd forgot about We'll Be Right Back. I'd sort of bought the 12-inch, but then it was like, oh yeah, you did that as well.
You're the one. That's great.
Yes, I was the one in the UK that bought it, but felt very chuffed. I thought, there you go. It was always great being one of those indie kids who listened to John Peel. It was an absolute conversation killer. It was like Tumbleweed. You go, oh my God, I've just heard the latest Da-Di-Da, and people go, no, never heard of that. Is that in the top? Is that in the top of the Pops top 10? He's like, no, and it never will. But it's great. You must listen to it. And it was like, oh, okay. It's not Spandau Ballet. It's not Duran Duran. But it was always fascinating. I loved the Peel show, so it was just one of those things. So there you go.
Oh, by the way, I sent you that radio spot. It should be sitting in your the Starbucks radio commercial. It should be sitting in your mailbox right now.
That would be marvelous. But look, thank you ever so much. And if you want, I can always send you the link, and you can put it on. You can use it on any of your social media platforms.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Because it's to get both of you as well. And to be honest, the quality is so much better than I expected. Normally, it's a bit the connection when one person talks and the other person. It's often a bit like, oh, that's unfortunate, but that's life. But it's been very seamless today.
It's It's our mojo.
It's your mojo. It's been perfect.
Yes, it is.
I know. This is great. And here I am in the dear old UK, and you're the other side of the world.
And I'm using this microphone that I built from a kit.
Yeah, that's really impressive.
I was very impressed.
That is very good. Yes. You built from a cardboard box, and it works.
And yeah, well, we have to do that too sometimes. Use the string.
Yes.
Cups and string.
We remember those days very well. It was a winner. But yes, well, I'll look out for your next big release. But thanks for sending those other bits through, and I'll keep in touch. But thanks again for your time, and yes, thank you. As Abba said, thank you for the music.
Well, thank you too. Thanks for being a fan and getting in touch.
Thanks for having us, man. This is a real honor. This is lovely. Thank you.
Well, look, take care of yourselves, and all the best, and keep on sort of. I was going to say keep on groaning, but this is what we do as we sit down and get up from the sofa. We just groan for England, don't we? So anyway,
stay in touch if you ever have any questions.
If you have any questions or whatever, we're hanging around.
Definitely. Well, look, take care again, and thanks for your time.
Same to you, man. Take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that, dear listener, obviously is the end of the interview. A massive thank you to Double Dee and Steinski, Doug and Steven for giving me the time for that interview. I'll put a link of their website in the notes below. This has been the C86 show. David Eastaugh. If you want to contact me, any of those social media platform sites, just do C86 show. And all these interviews have been archived on Spotify, iTunes, Podbean. It's true. Have a great week. Stay safe.